Good evening, everybody, and welcome to my regular webinar series. The topic for this webinar is key features of studying at universities in Europe. Thank you for joining me tonight. I hope it's a useful presentation for you, and over the next 35 to 45 minutes, I'll be able to share some key themes with you. For the purposes of easing this webinar, please can you ensure that your webcam is off and your microphone is muted. If you do have any follow-up questions, my email and contact details are here, and please do feel free to reach out to me afterwards if you would like me to discuss any of the factors shared in this presentation tonight in an individual consultation. So the theme tonight is studying in Europe, and unlike the presentations that I give on studying in the UK, in the United States or in Canada, rather than talking about one particular country system, here we have to talk about an entire region. And so some of the key features that I will talk about tonight will have to talk in generalities, in key themes, and though I will delve into some of the nuance involved in applying to universities in particularly popular European countries. Each one of these countries could be its own hour-long presentation in its own right, but I'm sure that over the course of this presentation there'll be some key themes that will be useful to elucidate. My name is David Hawkins. I am known as the University Guy, and I run a company supporting students and schools, particularly in the British Isles, but also the world over, with university applications, trying to reduce the stress involved in this process and to make the process of applying to global universities understandable, enjoyable, and ultimately successful. To do this work, I'm a member of the International Association of College Admissions Counselling, a supporting member of the Council of British International Schools, an affiliated consultant to the Council of International Schools, and one of two professional members of the US-based IECA in the United Kingdom. So a lot of mouthfuls and acronyms there, but hopefully that gives some reassurance that the information I'm going to share comes from a position of some expertise and accreditation. So the theme tonight, as I said, is looking at key options in Europe and trying to pick out some general themes and also key trends in terms of students looking at universities in Europe. Europe has become increasingly popular for students to consider as a university destination, either as the focus of their university applications entirely or as adding an interesting flavour to the university options that students are considering. I should just ask if you could please keep your microphone muted. That would ease the presentation. Thank you. So these are destinations that are popular in Europe, and the Netherlands has come very rapidly in the last decade or so to hit the sort of big popular destinations like the US, UK and Canada as a really popular option to study in English. Ireland has been ticking away there for a number of years and is almost the hidden gem of studying in Europe, a country that is English speaking, has an ancient and highly regarded university system, but which many people kind of overlook and forget is there as an option. Spain and Italy in Southern Europe have a number of interesting options and some flagship programs that recruit heavily internationally and serve as a good entry point into understanding their systems. Belgium is an option that I think not enough people know about, and as the former head of college counselling at the International School of Brussels, I'm a big fan of Belgium. Switzerland has a well-deserved international reputation as being home of some of the top hospitality management universities in the world. And also, councillors on the call will be aware of the growth of Eastern and Central Europe as options for students who want to study medicine and veterinary science. But we should not forget that Europe is much bigger than these destinations, and increasingly I see students considering options in Scandinavia. Germany has a number of options, though perhaps the media profile that has been associated with studying in Germany, driven, I think, by the knowledge that it can be free to study at undergraduate level in Germany, though there aren't actually that many courses in English. There's more complexities, but Germany is an option. France becoming increasingly an option as well. Cyprus and Malta as two countries where English is very, very widely spoken have a few interesting programs. Austria and Greece also of interest students, and on and on and on with many, many countries. It's really the case now that every country in Europe, be it an English-speaking country or not, has a variety of English-taught undergraduate degrees. So students who really want to experience the cultural diversity and the opportunities to study in Europe have a multitude of opportunities that weren't available 5 years ago, let alone 15 or 20 years ago. So before I delve into some of the key themes, why might students consider studying in Europe? What is the drive to study in Europe? Well, one of the key things which certainly as an advisor I'm aware of, but may be news to students and parents, is the fact that we actually have a common European higher education area. offering a significant advantage for students looking to study within Europe that actually other parts of the world may not offer. And without delving too much into some of the bureaucratic and administrivia here, there is a thing called the Bologna process, which, as part of the work of the European Economic Area, harmonised through the involvement of ministries of education and other international organisations across now 48 countries, the higher education system. So countries around the world have developed their university systems based on what made sense historically and culturally for their community. But now across these 48 countries, we have a standard 3-cycle system. Students will first go and study a bachelor's degree. From that bachelor's degree, they can go on to the master's degree, and after that master's degree, go on to a doctorate, which has meant that we have a really common framework within the European higher education area, with equal transferability, with recognition of degrees, with the periods of study being common, and fundamentally important to this is the quality assurance. The fact that a degree from one member state of the European higher education area is worth the same in terms of its recognition and accreditation as a degree from another. So in terms of the politics and the legalities involved with this, it's opened up a huge amount of resources. Now, that leads to a number of key benefits. I think a really obvious one, and what potentially attracts a lot of people to the European higher education area, is the cultural diversity that we have actually within, on the scale of, say, the Americas or some parts of Asia, a relatively small region with significant cultural diversity. Now, when you add that to the visa-free travel within the Schengen area, for those who might not be familiar with Schengen, it is a treaty of a number of European countries, meaning that once you arrive to one Schengen country to study, you can travel without further visa needs, without more travel permits, to all other Schengen area countries. So that cultural diversity means that a student could wake up and have breakfast with a stroopwafel in Amsterdam, pop down on the train to Brussels and have moules frites for lunch in Brussels, and then hop further down to Paris and be having a gourmet meal in a Michelin-starred restaurant in Paris for dinner. That cultural diversity and the visa-free travel does mean that students can experience such a wide variety of places and become intimately familiar with the cultures of so many different communities. Learn different languages, different foods, different cultural hinterlands, and really become very mobile within these linguistic and cultural communities, which indeed have parallels further out beyond Europe. But there is actually a more tangible thing linking to this European higher education and the visa-free travel, which is that students graduating from a university within the European higher education area have access to the European labour market. So a student who may be studying in a university in, say, the United States, for job offers is going to find themselves restricted in terms of travel to where else they might have to go and get a visa, even potentially to interview for a job in that country. That is not the case within the European labour market. A student studying at a university in Poland in English can apply to jobs and access the labour market all across the European Union. So it's not ridiculous for that mythical student from Poland to say, my job interview this week is in Brussels, my one the next week is in Madrid, and the one the week after is in Lisbon. So though there are massive soft benefits in terms of the cultural diversity and the life experience of the European higher education area, within the idea of the onward prospects, very, very tangible interest there. And it's not at all uncommon now to meet graduates who've been through the European university system, who may have done their bachelor's in one program in a country, their master's is a completely different program, and then are working in a third country once they've gone on to get a job. Very common with this European labour market and higher education area. So amongst those benefits then, we also have some common themes. And again, I said at the start, I'm going to try and keep to some generalities, but it is important that I do delve into some key things, which though there are always going to be nuances involved here, do tend to be common across European university study, particularly focusing on the continent of Europe. So some basics which will hopefully give some information here, and I'll delve into some of these in a bit more detail. Typically speaking, within European higher education, we're looking at a focused degree, where students are applying to study a single honours or a joint honours programme, and that is what they're studying. So students studying biology at a university is only going to study biology. If they wanted to study French, they'd apply to French. If they wanted to study engineering, they'd apply to engineering. So we are talking about a model of university study similar to the British model, where you are admitted to a course and that is what you study. Now, there are some liberal arts courses, and I'll touch on the Netherlands and the university colleges a little later, but on the whole, we're looking at a focused degree. A second thing to bear in mind, particularly within the public university sector in Europe, is that the housing situation can be quite different. The English-speaking world is quite unusual, particularly the United Kingdom, in the tradition of students going away from home to university. Was quite commonly on the continent of Europe, we find that most students will go to university in their hometown or in a nearby town or city. And therefore, that changes the culture of what universities feel that they need to provide in terms of accommodation. So many public universities, high class, world class universities, may not actually provide housing, which is potentially going to offer different scenarios in terms of what support there might be available for students transitioning to that program. A third basic is what's known as ECTS. This is the European Credit Transfer System, where the degree cycle is done in the award of credits, and those credits are standardized across all European degrees. So in theory, then, a student can study their first year at one European universities and take those credits to transfer in another program. Now, because it is a focused degree, it is a little bit more complicated than transferring in the North American model, but those credits are applicable, and you will see when you start to look at European university courses that they are created on a credit transfer model. Another key basic is the fact that the continent of Europe, unlike many other countries, has retained the different focuses of two different models of university education. I think most people and most students I speak to in my school talks or in my independent counselling, when they imagine a university, what they're talking about is what I would call a research university, a traditional academic experience with the subjects and the contents delivered through lectures and examined through formal written exams. However, there are many, many highly regarded applied sciences universities in Europe as well, where the research universities will focus on the why, on the theory, on subjects such as history, as linguistics, literature, the natural sciences, the physical sciences. An applied sciences university is taking that theory and teaching students how to apply it. So research universities may be about the why, but applied sciences universities are about the how. And there is parity of esteem in many European countries between these two different pathways, with the understanding that some students are very capable of learning the theory and being examined through traditional written exams, but for many other students, learning the how and applying their knowledge in practical contexts may be better suited for that student. The degrees are typically 3 or 4 years long, again reflecting the model across Europe. But another key difference to be aware of is the fact, and this is something that can baffle a lot of families who may be used to the idea of a university being ranked by how hard it is to get in. A lot of European universities can have relatively low entry requirements, and it can be quite confusing if you're looking at a university that you know is ranked in the top 150 in the world, and yet the entry requirements seem very, very low. Well, that's because we face a situation in a lot of European countries where university is heavily subsidised by taxpayers. And because it is heavily subsidised by taxpayers feel there's a right for their students to go to university and to have a chance. So those very minimal entry requirements to get in are giving open access. However, staying in university can be a different issue. And you may find that certain university countries, particularly actually in the north of Europe, there are very high bars to progress from year 1 to year 2 of a course. So you could see a university admitting many, many students into a course in the first year with very low entry requirements, but only a minority of those students progressing into year 2. So it's a chance to get in, have a go, give a university a good bash, but you've got to hit the high marks. And the final key thing is that we have a variety of different application systems, some centralized application systems on a similar UK model, and Sweden is a good example of that as well, but also many countries where we run a decentralized application system, where rather than going through one system to apply to all universities in that country, students are going to have to learn to deal with the different deadlines and different application portals and requirements of each individual university that they will apply to. So I'm going to delve now into some of the nuance of these key basics and the ones I think are most important to be aware of when considering European universities. And I talked a little bit about the difference between the why and the how, the research universities as opposed to the applied sciences universities. The applied sciences universities, and for anyone who knows about the ex-polys, quote unquote, in the UK model, you need to understand that these are not in the same model. These are very much based on a very high esteem to application of knowledge within professional higher education. So University of Applied Sciences will tend to be training someone into a specific profession and acquiring the competencies for those profession. They will be a 4-year bachelor, mostly because there's some compulsory work experience and internships. People teaching those degrees will be working professionals, And subjects that we're looking into are things that are going to be competency based. So something like nursing, physiotherapy, but interesting fine art, music and the dance and the arts obviously is a competency. And anything that is going to be about learning some knowledge and applying it to the real world. Now, the research universities, as I said, will most likely be the images that students have in their head, looking at the theory, analysing, criticising, giving arguments together, answering critical questions. And therefore, we're looking at a 3-year bachelor's degree taught by people doing their own research. So professors with a PhD also studying in those things. Typically, the requirements for this are going to be slightly more academically advanced. They're going to want to see the students have the level of content knowledge in that area. So a student applying to study history will need to have had a high level of success within their high school history curriculum. And the sort of subjects we're talking about here are philosophy, engineering, industrial design, social sciences, and etc. Now, a good way of understanding the difference between these two pathways is to think about the idea of business. And you'll see on my list here that business appears in both. Now, you could study business at a research university, but the content you're going to be studying is about management theory. There may be some finance. You're going to understand economics, politics, law, all the theoretical things that will impact the world of business. But a student studying business and applied science might be saying, well, yes, I am understanding those things, but actually we're going to be project-based. We're going to go out and we're going to deal with a business case. We might have a project linking to a local employer, training us to do business, and we will learn how to actually do business in the world rather than the theory that might be used in other scenarios. So hopefully that gives an example of the two different scenarios here, with parity of esteem, depending on what fits different students, some really great options depending on which might be the most successful pathway. Another subset of that is to understand that across Europe, we also have a huge variety of universities. And the best way I found of describing this is to talk about the comprehensive university as opposed to the specialised university. Now, the UK and the United States and other countries have a small number of specialist universities. They tend to be music conservatoires or art and design schools, where specialised universities are focusing in on one area of study. Europe has a multitude of specialised universities where you'll find that students at that university are only studying one degree subject or degree subjects that would link to a particular field. So, for example, a business school like Bocconi, which is offering a lot of courses just to do with the world of economics and business, or fine arts schools, we do have those in Europe as well, or technological universities like TU Delft in the Netherlands, or Karl Benz School in Germany, universities that are only offering that one program. That's quite a different experience from the more traditional comprehensive university, where there'll be students at that university studying hard sciences, studying the biological sciences, studying the humanities, the arts, the social sciences, and everything. Now, the difference in a comprehensive and specialist university goes beyond the variety of subjects issued there, because a university that may only be offering one subject could actually be more postgraduate focused than undergraduate focused. So students studying business at the undergraduate level at a university which is a business school in Europe, but which is also offering Masters in Management programs, Masters in Finance programs, MBAs, and a lot of executive education courses. That student might find there's only a couple of hundred 18, 19, 20-year-olds at their university, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and even 40-year-olds. Now, that might suit a student very well to go to a university where more people are in business dress day in, day out, where people have been through those teenage rites of passage and don't want to do those. But the social life and the accommodation that can come with a specialised university, students need to be aware that it might be quite different from what they imagine university to be like when it's a comprehensive university. And so students, when they might be thinking about studying a subject in European university, you need to understand the wider context of what is that university designed to do, who are the target market for that university, and what are the implications then of that information on what life would be like as a student there. Another issue, and I think one that many students kind of overlook when they are looking at European universities, is that we have, I said, a huge range of programs taught in English. But you'll find that a decent number of the universities offering courses in English, that they may actually only offer one course in English. Now, if it's only offering one course in Europe, then I would imagine that the university itself is not actually doing a lot of other things in English, particularly maybe if we're in a country, say in Central or Eastern Europe, where the most widely spoken second language might not be English, but could, for historic reasons, perhaps be Russian. So if the only course in that university is in English, and maybe there's 200 or 300 other courses taught in the host country language, does the university administration speak English? When you go to pay your fees, to deal with health insurance, to deal with maybe any troubles you've got with tax, to have office hours with professors, to deal with healthcare, are you going to need to have a greater level of familiarity with the host country language than perhaps you expected to do so? And then stepping beyond the university to go and do your laundry, to pay some bills, to get accommodation, to have a social life, potentially in a university that might not offer sports teams and clubs and societies, to join those kind of things in the local city. Is English going to be spoken there as well? A key way of understanding that is to, for students and counsellors and parents, to ask the question, is this a university in a country which has an international program? Or is it an international university that happens to be based in that country? For students who don't really have a level of familiarity with the host country language, it's probably better to verge to this being an English-speaking university in this country rather than a university of that country operating in the language of that country with one or a couple of English-speaking programs. So those are some key things to be aware of, and I'm now going to spend 15-20 minutes or so just exploring some of the most popular options and where people, as they go through this process of initially thinking, I want to study in Europe, tend to refine their search, the sort of key things that they're going to look into. I apologise in advance if I don't talk about the country that you, your students, or your child might be interested in. And I'll repeat the point, please do contact me if I don't touch on any of those topics and we can have a follow-up conversation. So I mentioned the Netherlands as being a hugely popular university option, and it really has become so. In international counselling and international school counselling, it's very, very common to find students say, the Netherlands is going to be my top choice. Beyond the US, the UK, or Canada, I really want to study in the Netherlands. A lot of that is to do with the accessibility of the universities, and the key part of the accessibility is the cost level. For EU passport holders and in some circumstances EEA residents, these can be very cheap degrees. Currently, a full 3-year bachelor's degree at a research university in the Netherlands will come in at just over €5,000 for the entire tuition. So for someone holding an EEA passport, that's a potentially very powerful motivation to study there, with also maybe the option of accessing some of that funding from the Dutch government as well. So the Netherlands is a great option. A lot of people are also sometimes confused about why the Netherlands is a popular option, given that it's not an English-speaking country. Well, it actually is, to all intents and purposes. And having lived in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, I can testify to this. And there's an interesting cultural quirk as to why it is. In a lot of countries in Europe, kids' TV is dubbed. So if you have young children and they're watching Peppa Pig in France, they will actually hear it in French. Whereas in the Netherlands, it's subtitled. So all children watching Peppa Pig and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and all the wonderful kids' TV programs that there are that drive parents mad, in the Netherlands, every single student is hearing the Dutch and reading the English at the same time. There's more complexity to it than that, but that's just an example of the fact that English is extraordinarily widely spoken in the Netherlands and the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. And so this university sector not only is world-class and highly accessible, but actually also the country is very, very easy to live in if you don't speak a word of Dutch. So it's a bit more detail on that. The Netherlands has 3 types of university. We have the Universities of Applied Sciences, highly regarded, many, many courses, and lots of the courses in particular regions of the country tied into the economy of that area with excellent job prospects. It has world-class and deeply historic research universities, the University of Leiden as a great example of it. But the third type are the university colleges. And the university colleges have spun out of research universities, though are continually associated with their mother research university. And the university colleges are offering a different flavour of higher education. They are offering liberal arts and sciences courses, following to some extent the North American model of liberal arts with a broader range of study, where students do not apply to university to study that single or joint honours focus, where students can explore across the range of academic disciplines and, importantly for the Netherlands, can have a residential university experience. Each of these university colleges has a slightly different theme to it. So it wouldn't surprise you that Leiden University College, which is based in The Hague, is focused on things on government, on security, on the legal systems, given The Hague is the focus of that element in the Netherlands, whereas others have maybe a focus more on engineering technology, like the University of Twente, or Erasmus University College in Rotterdam, with the very strong Rotterdam School of Management, has a slightly more business flavour to it. But these 2 types of universities really do present something to everybody. And I see a lot of students who might be attracted to the liberal arts model of education, this broader body of study, not having to pick one subject, They're attracted to that in North America, but put off by either the distance of going to the USA, distracted by the cost, or potentially just the huge complexity of applying to the United States, can look at the university colleges in the Netherlands as a really popular option. We can also find this selection after the gate very, very commonly in the Netherlands, and it's a really, really important thing that those of you on the webinar tonight who might see entry requirements as a badge of quality, please understand that getting 3 Cs at A level to be able to access a world-class Dutch university doesn't mean it's a poor university. Because those selection pathways into the programs are going to be dependent on how your high school curriculum equates to a Dutch diploma. Put simply, students in the Dutch school system are put onto different pathways during their high school system. So a student graduating from the traditional academic high school with what's known as a VWO, a VWO diploma, can automatically progress to research university. And so the Dutch government and educational institutions, NUFIC, are looking to see what the equivalency. Students going to applied sciences will have been to a different type of Dutch secondary school, and again, they're looking for those equivalencies. So by completing the equivalent in the education system that you're applying from, you can automatically have a go at that university with that selection after the gate. Second key option I want to spend a bit of time talking about is Ireland. And as I mentioned at the start, an option a lot of people are kind of unaware of, have sort of forgotten that there is another English-speaking country in this part of Europe with world-class universities. And historically, they were the ancient universities of the British Isles. Trinity College Dublin has a storied history, as Durham, as St Andrews, as Edinburgh, Glasgow, Oxford, and Cambridge. For various political reasons and the Brits not being particularly nice and treating Ireland badly, that split happened with Irish independence. But these universities still have the same traditions, the same body of academic scholarship behind them, and are incredibly wonderful institutions that students can access. So I really would encourage you and students and parents to look at Ireland as a really wonderful university sector. Beyond that, it is also an amazing country to study in. Though Dublin is as expensive as many other European capital cities, going down to Cork, to Maynooth, and to Galway, to Waterford is extraordinarily cheap quality of life, both the wonderful expertise of the university sector and actually really wonderful opportunities to go and explore the countryside, great social life, wonderful sporting and cultural opportunities as well. So some amazing opportunities out there in the Irish university sector. But also coming with that some particular complexities. Ireland was running 2 different application systems depending on the passport and sometimes the residency of the student. For EU students applying to universities in Ireland, and I'll touch on Brexit later for UK citizens and to what that might mean, but for EU students applying to universities in Ireland, you're going to have to apply through the thing called the CAO, the Central Applications Office. Now, the Irish university system in the CAO is designed for Irish students, and it can sometimes seem very confusing for students applying into that process when they go onto the CAO in December or January to an application, fill in their biographical information, put a little bit of information about their grades, list their choices 1 to 8, and that's it. It seems like an extraordinarily straightforward system. But what happens after the application, very, very late in the process by global standards, even in August, is a matching procedure where students' A-levels, IB, or other curriculum are equivalated to the Irish Leaving Certificate. And so a student who maybe have listed 8 courses on their application might have applied for courses that at the top are wanting 580 out of 600, down to 540, to 520, to 500, and so on all the way down, and ranking those in order of preference. And when you get your grades, and they are then converted in August to the Irish Leaving Certificate, and we are talking about the second week of August here, you would then go through and find, I applied for my top choice, course number 1, and it required 580 points. And I have got 580 points. But you don't get a spot because there are only 100 places on that course, and there are 100 people who've done better than you. Well, what about my second course? Well, yes, on your second course, you needed 560, you have got 580, but again, there's only 100 spots and 100 people have done better than you. And this matching procedure works all the way through, where students then, almost game show style, will find the place they've got an offer from. And then they will automatically reject all the choices below where they've got into and hold that spot. And then over a series of days throughout August, this system churns through, because what you could find is actually that first choice 10 spots have opened up because students actually chose not to take that in the first round, and suddenly you now have a spot on that course. So this matching procedure with the equivalency to the Irish Leaving Certificate and the CAO can be extraordinarily complicated. And for students who really want to know where am I going to go to university, potentially a disincentive. Now, it's a very, very complicated system, and I will flag up that on my blog on theuniversityguide.com, I have embedded a video which does explain this in a bit more detail. For non-EU students, so students applying to Irish universities without an EU or passport or indeed residency, you do not have to go through that process. Now, you will be paying higher fees, so that is a difference. But if as a non-EU applicant to the Irish university system, you apply directly to the university, you don't have to deal with the matching procedure. There will be very transparent entry requirements based on your high school curricula, and you should hear back from that university within 6 to 8 weeks. So depending on your comfort of waiting for the matching procedure, that may make Ireland more or less of an option. The final point on Ireland is we have a massive range of courses, again, similarly to the applied sciences and the research universities. In Ireland, the academic courses are known as level 8 courses, with a huge number of courses available there, but we also have some professional courses at what's known as level 7. An option which an awful lot of students will apply to, and an awful lot of students that I work with as independent counsellor are applying to, are the private European universities. And these aren't necessarily country specific, but these are universities whereby, for the needs of that country, whereby families would like to be able to have more transparent processes in terms of what grades you would need to get in, with selection at the gate, with universities offering clubs, accommodation, office hours, a greater level of service. Private universities have over generations built themselves up around Europe, and this is an example of one on the photo here. This is the new campus of IE University in Madrid and Segovia. There are 4 towers, I think, currently centrally based in Madrid, and IEs will look like this as the 5th one. So the private universities in Europe teaching in English tend to be those international universities in a country rather than a university of that country teaching an international program. And these universities are offering an experience which is recognisably like the sort of North American, British, Australasian one of residential communities, comprehensive range of programs, and offering the social life and accommodation which comes with these kind of things. They will come with a higher price tag, though some do offer very generous financial aid. But for a student who might want a British Anglo-Saxon style university experience, but in a different linguistic and cultural community, private European options like IE here and other peer institutions can be a very sensible option to pursue. Though we do have a huge range of public universities as well. This is KU Leuven, a city that's very fond in my heart because it's where my youngest daughter was born, in the wonderful town in Belgium. And public universities do offer a very cost-effective solution for students, particularly maybe for students who have linguistic familiarity with that country, or if you are looking at the Netherlands and the Dutch-speaking parts of Belgium, where English is going to be very widely spoken as well. But for the public options, there are some key things to be aware of. The biggest one that students need to understand is if these public universities are cheap, or potentially in the case of Germany, free, then actually there are necessarily going to be issues in terms of the scale of that university. It's not uncommon for students in the public university system in some countries on the continent of Europe to go to lectures where there may be 500, 1,000, 2,000 people in that lecture hall, to not have access to professors for office hours and tutorials, to be expected to be independent. But then if it's €1,000 or €0 to study in that program, then that's a pretty good deal, and you're not going to expect those other things. But beyond that, there are some more administrative issues which can cause some problems for some students. One of the important ones is the fact that these public universities will be heavily governed by the legal system to do with education in that country. And there may be an almost complete inflexibility about when results have to be submitted by. A number of Scandinavian countries are examples here whereby they will insist that students applying to that university must have their final results from the last year of school by early July. Now, for students doing A-levels, whose results don't come out the second week of August, that's a problem. And quite often I'm contacted by advisors or counsellors and students saying, oh, what do I do? Can I just tell the university my A-levels don't come out till August? And I go, well, the problem is they need them by July and there is nothing they can do about it. So students facing those issues are forced, if they want to study at some Scandinavian countries, to have a gap year because you have to have your results by that. What we can also find in some of the public university systems is that, unlike in countries such as the Netherlands and the private options, where a university admissions office can say, well, to apply to us, you must have the same things that you would need to access university in the country you took your exams. Because these may be governed by the law of that country or that region, you're going to have an exact equivalent as to the secondary leaving qualifications you would have studied had you studied in the country that university is in. Germany and Switzerland are the two big examples here. A student who wants to apply to public universities, in Germany, must have an Abitur equivalency to go directly into the research universities. Now, an Abitur really does cover a range of subjects that's very hard for a student doing the typical A-level program of 3 A-levels, potentially even 4 A-levels to meet. So students typically, to want to study at any university in Germany, with some exceptions, will have to have a first language, will have to have a second language, will have to have either a maths or science. Now, it's quite rare for A-level students who may be studying English and German and maths as a A-level subject combination, and actually Switzerland is a similar scenario. And so a significant number of A-level students will have to find potentially a different pathway to universities in Germany or Switzerland because they just don't meet that equivalency. Something really important to bear in mind is that this is not the same in every country. It's worth doing the research as to whether the country will accept your A-levels IB or the curriculum on the basis that they give you entry to universities in your home country, or are you going to have to equivalate them? And the final thing is to understand the fact that the results might need to be legalized, which can potentially be a complicated program. For example, in the Czech Republic, we have a thing called nostrification, where you may have to take your results or have them sent officially by an exam board to a legal body, potentially even an embassy, who are then going to have these properly legalized for then entry into the university country. Now, again, for students in the A-levels, when results come out quite late, there's an extra level of hurdle here. The exam boards do offer you the opportunity to get your certificates early, but if you are expecting to be able to get entry to a university that starts in September and you're not expected to get your A-level certificates until November, there can be some issues there. Again, these are public universities heavily subsidized and controlled by the governments of that region or country, so these are not things that there's flexibility in, and it's really important to be aware of. Now, in contrast to that, we have the extraordinarily flexible model of the American university system. And if anyone's heard my webinars in the United States system, and the recordings available on YouTube, you will understand just what an extraordinarily flexible system it is. Well, Europe actually has American universities. They're part of what's known as American Universities Abroad. It's a wonderful website listing these programs. But these are universities based in Europe, but accredited by the same bodies in the United States that will accredit all the famous name-brand US universities. So a student who wants to get a US degree on the flexible liberal arts, credit-based, transferable, almost buffet-style model of a US degree can get that. The American University of Rome, John Cabot University, also in Rome, the American University of Paris, St. Louis University in Madrid, Suffolk University in Madrid, Bard College in Berlin, Marist College in Florence, and on and on and on and on. American-style degrees in Europe. And for students who really do want that American-style experience, but for financial, cultural, or geographic reasons, don't want to go to the United States, some really wonderful courses offered by the American universities abroad. Many of these can be quite generous financially, and also, interestingly, are optional. So a number of the American universities abroad don't even require the SAT or the ACT for entry. So for students who might be attracted to this flexible model but don't want to go that far, the American universities abroad are well worth checking out. I touched on Switzerland earlier, and this is a really powerful reason to look at studying in Europe. Hospitality, and Switzerland is the home of hospitality management, though there are also world-class options, Hotel School of The Hague in the Netherlands and Shannon College of Hotel Management in Ireland. But École Hôtelière de Lausanne that you see here, Glion and La Roche, also within this world's elite, are offering a very different concept of teaching and learning. And hospitality here doesn't mean training you to be a bar staff, waiter, or chambermaid. We are talking about people who are going to be the managers of five-star resorts, are going to run some of the world's most glitziest events, going to be into private banking, anything where a high level of service has to be delivered, managed, planned for, and assessed. So students studying at these elite European, particularly the Swiss hospitality schools, are going to have to develop a different skill set. So EHL is a great example here. These 4 students, they're wearing their business dress. This is the expectation that students wear every single day. At EHL, there's a famous man called Monsieur Laurent, who is in charge of what's known as the clothing police, and students who don't meet the dress code every single day can lose points because it's important how you present yourself. Students at EHL are going to learn, yes, the skills involved in hospitality. You in your first semester will be paired up with the students and you will clean each other's bathroom, but you are also going to learn how to deliver a service. Now, as someone myself who studied history at Oxford, I always joke and say I should have been denied by EHL, quite rightly, because my skill set was to read a lot of books and write essays about them. That's very different from being trained to come out of EHL or Les Roches or Glion or its peer institutions, to come out of there as a young graduate, say 23, the night manager of the Four Seasons in Singapore, and to deal with a massive crisis in the hotel that you have to deal. Different skill sets suiting different students. And if you have students or your students or children where the soft skills, the emotional intelligence, the problem solving, the critical thinking are their key strengths, maybe sitting down in lectures or writing 3-hour-long exams are not for them. Definitely have a look at hospitality education. We also have, and this is a relatively recent trend that's been growing exponentially, 2+2 or 1+3 options, where students can combine studies across the 4-year degree model typically in these programs with a couple of different countries. So, for example, I've got in here, and this is a screenshot taken from my website, universityguide.com, Sciences Po. Sciences Po, an English-speaking university in France, offering a huge number of joint degrees where you spend 2 years at one of their French campuses and 2 years either in the UK, USA, Australia. We have a number of options here, studying across Europe, combining studying in Ireland and New York, studying in Nebraska or Australia, studying in Canada or Ireland, Germany, France, and on and on and on, where students might get 2 years in Europe and 2 years in North America, or potentially 1+3 programs where you spend your first year in Europe and your third year abroad. For students who might need that slight extra bit of transition or want to experience different cultures, or want to experience North America, would like to defray the cost by having a cheaper option for the first couple of years, these can be very powerful options as well. Another area to consider of studying in Europe, increasingly popular, is more options for those looking to study the health sciences. And I've got the screenshot here from Queen Mary, the University of London in Malta, their Malta campus offering some medicine degrees. The health sciences options are very popular. They've got a little bit of a bad rap, I think, of people thinking that these are easy routes into medicine. And I will assure you from having visited one of these programs at Charles University in Prague, these are not easy options. The standard is still high. Students have to succeed in biology and chemistry, but because a lot of these universities are doing entry by examination and their own tests, students who may not have succeeded particularly well in A-levels can still find a route in through that way, but students are still going to have to hit a high bar. However, the reason why there's a significant challenge in these is in a lot of the countries, particularly studying medicine at a university like Charles in Prague, where English is not very widely spoken amongst the elderly population, as well as studying medicine, you're going to have to learn the language of the country. Now, medicine on its own is a hard degree. To study medicine and Czech for your first 3 years so you can then become fluent in Czech to speak to patients is very, very hard. However, for students who look at the very competitive nature of courses like medicine, vet science, dentistry in the UK and want to broaden their options and just give themselves more bites of the cherry to get in, looking at European medical schools, even in the countries where English is not the first language, but the program is taught in English, are very, very wise. To finish off with, I will touch on the B word, on Brexit, for those on the call who are from the UK or UK citizens. It's very hard to give some straightforward answers because though the UK has officially left the European Union now, we still don't know what the future relationship between the UK and the European Union will be. For those in the UK who already have an EU and EEA passport, that passport in most countries will still give you access to cheaper fees and the processes as I've described before. Depending on what deal may or may not be struck between the UK and the European Union, some of these entry procedures and particularly the fees could change quite significantly. In the one extreme scenario, UK students want to study in the EU will become non-EU students. Now, universities across Europe are already admitting non-EU students, taking students from China, from Nigeria, from Australia, from America. So those processes are already there. You can go onto the websites now and see what the fees are on the grades. But we could have a scenario with some form of customs union or bilateral relationships whereby actually the situation will stay the same. I'm afraid I have no more detail than that. It will come out over the next few months as we will go from there. But it's important for students maybe in year 12, in the lower six, considering these options, to be aware that we do not yet have clarity on what the situations will be for 2021 entry onwards. For 2020 entry, for students who are starting courses this August or September, each country has already said what the situation will be, and you can find on university or governmental websites what the fee status would be for those processes. So I said I was going to talk for 45 minutes and give information there, and thankfully I've been about spot on. Forgive me for a second for giving the slight commercial pitch here, but hopefully this has been useful information and been a demonstration of how I and my colleagues at University Guide can assist. We have a very simple three-step process in our work working with students as independent counsellors. Start off firstly with exploring where in the world do you want to apply. You might start off thinking you want Germany, but actually we may find the Netherlands is a better option for you. Once we have decided where you want to apply to get you ready to make those applications, do you need to take extra tests? Do you need to visit? Do you need to work on portfolios, admissions tests, interview practice? And then our third stage of the process, say, working out that every element of this application works to your advantage. Do not assume that your UCAS personal statement is going to work for universities in Spain and Italy and Germany and the Netherlands. Understand that you are going to have to prepare different application materials depending on the demands of the university. And if you would like any more information about the topics I've talked about tonight, to delve more deeply into some of these topics, if you have students who might benefit from a free 30-minute consultation with I or one of my colleagues, or indeed as a counsellor, we can visit your school, have a stand at a higher education fair, give a talk to students or parents, please do get in touch. The QR code on your screen now opens up a link where you can sign up for regular information on the monthly newsletter, or please do check out the many resources on the universityguide.com with blog articles and a range of podcasts delving into anything to do with global university admissions. I hope that's been an informative and useful webinar. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. A recording of this will be available within the next day or so on YouTube, and you shall be emailed it if you'd like to share it more widely. Thank you very much indeed.